Hello, I'm Brian Tracy, and I have a question for you. What is your most valuable asset? What's the most valuable thing that you have in terms of cash flow? What is it, if you were to liquidate, if you were to capitalize, if you were to go to the bank, what's the most valuable thing that you have? And I'll tell you what it is. The most valuable thing that you have, your most valuable asset, is your earning ability. It's your ability to earn money. It's your ability to apply your talents and your abilities in a competitive market society and to bring in and to earn cash flow. In fact, it can be worth tens of thousands of dollars to you every year just simply by taking your earning ability out into the marketplace and applying it. Most people don't understand that their earning ability is the most precious thing they have. It's taken them their entire lives to develop their earning ability. All your education, all your experience, all of your training, all of the tapes and books you listen to, everything has been aimed at enhancing this incredible resource. And once it's developed, it can enable you to enjoy one of the highest standards of living in the world. Most people don't realize it, and they're indifferent toward their earning ability. In this session, we're going to talk about how you can take that earning ability and you can dramatically enhance the amount of production or cash flow that you get out of it. So here's the second question. What's your most precious resource? And your most precious resource is time. The fact is that time is the most precious thing you have. If ever anything were to happen to you, if your life or your health were to be threatened, the amount of time you had left would take precedence over everything else. Time is your critical resource for accomplishment. It's what you absolutely have to have if you want to accomplish great things with your life. So then that brings us to the second question. If your most important asset, most valuable asset is your earning ability, your most precious resource is time, what's the best investment of your time and money? The very best investment with the highest payoff is to increase your earning ability. It's to increase your earning ability. I'll just write EA. You know, they did a study some years ago, and the conclusion was very simple. The conclusion was that if you had less than $100,000 accumulated, and many people have less than that, the average American family has less than $1,000 in net assets. If you had less than $100,000, you should invest it back into increasing your ability to earn money doing the same thing you did to earn it in the first place. See if you can get this with me. Is if you look upon yourself like a factory, like a resource, like an incredible powerhouse that has the ability to pour money into your lives by the thousands of dollars a week, months, and years, then your job is to constantly think of ways that you can increase the amount of dollars you get. And this brings us to one of the most important, one of the oldest of all principles. It's called the Pareto principle. Now, the Pareto principle was developed by an Italian economist named Vilfredo Pareto, and it's called the 80-20 rule. What Pareto found was that you could divide all activities in a society into 80-20, and what he called the vital few versus the trivial many. He said that 20% of everything you do accounts for 80% of your results. 80% of what you do, therefore, accounts for only 20% of your results. The Pareto principle applies to all aspects of selling. It applies to prospecting, it applies to presenting, it applies to your sales of your products and services, it applies to your customers, it applies to everything that you do in terms of activities. 20% of what you do accounts for 80% of the results. What's the big mistake that people make with regard to the Pareto principle? And it is this, and it is a danger because it is fatal to your success. It is that what we do is we spend our time equally across the number of events rather than disproportionately based on the value of the events. If we have 10 things to do in a day and we have 10 hours, highly unlikely, then we spend 1 hour each rather than spending 8 of those 10 hours on 2 of the things and 2 of those hours on the other 10. So one of the things you do with the Pareto principle is you practice what is called creative procrastination. You see, I know something about you that you know about you, and that is that you procrastinate. Why? Is because we all procrastinate. As a matter of fact, we procrastinate for a very simple reason. We procrastinate because we don't have enough time to do all that we have to do, so some things we have to be left undone. However, there's 2 types of procrastination. First of all, there is unconscious automatic procrastination, which tends to be when you procrastinate on the hardest, biggest, most valuable tasks. Then there is conscious, deliberate, creative procrastination, and that's when you procrastinate on those things that are of low value. So if you're going to creatively procrastinate, what do? The answer is this. What you do is you procrastinate on the 80%. You say, yes, I'm going to do the 80%, but just not now. I'm going to work on those 20% of prospects, customers, products, services, and activities that account for the greatest amount of value in my career. So the starting point of all sales success is simply to take the Pareto principle and apply it to your activities. One of the ways that we do this, by the way, is you divide your customers and your prospects into A, B, and C. A prospects are prospects or customers that represent the top 80% of your sales. They're the top 20%. They're the most valuable of all. They're the hardest ones to get and the most important to keep. Your B customers may account for another 15% of your sales. Your C customers may account for 5%. Now, this is not to say that your B and C prospects and customers are not important, but it is to say this, is that you should focus all of your time and energy on the 20% of prospects that can or will account for 80% of your business, and then diminish the amount of time you spend on the others. I was working with a salesman not long ago, and he was talking about this customer he had been working with for 6 months. He'd met with him 3 or 4 times. He'd taken him out for lunch and breakfast, and he was getting closer and closer to a sale. And I said, well, this sounds like a really good sale. And he was selling items that sold for about $400 a piece. I said, if this person buys, how many will they buy? He said, well, the very maximum they'll buy is 3, but they'll probably spread it over 2 years. I said, why do you call on this person? Well, because he's such a really nice guy, and I really enjoy talking to him, and he really likes our product. This person, however, is a C prospect. Even if you close this person, they're never going to buy anything. They're never going to make you successful. You've got to concentrate more on your A's, and you never concentrate on a B when you have an A that you can see. Now, let's take a look at the purpose of a business. You know, as a salesperson, you're in business for yourself. As a salesperson, one of the things we say over and over again is that you're the president of your own professional sales corporation. You're responsible for every aspect of your business, and your income, your salary on a regular basis shows how well you're running your own sales business. Now, your company sets you up in business by giving you an environment and a product or service to sell, but it's you who run the business because you're very much like an entrepreneur out in the field engaging in sales activities. So, what is the purpose of a business? If you ask most people this, they'll say the purpose of a business is to make a profit. The answer is not quite. A profit is the result of fulfilling the purpose of a business. Dun & Bradstreet did a study a couple of years ago where they evaluated their 50 years of research into companies that succeed and companies that fail. And you know what they came up with? They found that the reason companies succeed is because of high sales. The reason companies fail is because of low sales. The reason that you succeed running your business is because of high sales. The reason you have problems is because of low sales. So, what is the purpose of a salesperson? What is the purpose? What is the job of a salesperson? I'll tell you what it is. It is to create and keep a customer. It's to create and keep a customer. Now, once you understand that, you realize that creating and keeping customers is what you do. If you do it well, you are successful. If you do it poorly, you fail. So, the Pareto principle applied to the purpose of your working life is to spend 80% of your time creating customers. 80% of your time should be spent on new business development. Only 20% of your time should be spent on keeping customers. And don't mix them up. Here's the big mistake that you make and that I make, is we make a sale to somebody, and the reason we made the sale is because we established a good relationship with them and they like us. So we want to make sure that they're happy, and since they like us and they buy us a cup of coffee, we go back and we visit them and say, how's it going? And then we tell our boss that today we're going to be working in the field very aggressively to maintain our selling business. What are we doing? We're doing PR calls. We're out there doing public relations on the people who've already bought from us. Why? It's because they like us and it's easy, and we don't have to go out into the cold wind of potential rejection and failure when talking to people who are cold prospects who may treat us badly. This is fatal to your success. And here's how you change the ratios. It's very simple. If you're not careful, you'll start to plan your days around keeping customers. You'll start spending 80% of your time on PR, and 20% of your time, whatever's left, you'll call on new customers. Flip the ratio around and organize your time so that your whole day is planned around job or sales creation, and You slip in PR activities afterwards wherever you have spare time. Change the ratio, because I've spoken with many sales managers and salespeople who said that this has killed their careers. It's taken them from the top of their sales careers to the bottom of their sales careers, because gradually it goes from 80-20, that's how you got successful, then 70-30, 60-40, 50-50. Pretty soon they're spending all of their time calling upon their old customers and no time calling upon and developing new business. So spend 80% of your time creating, 20% of your time keeping. Here's the key question. People say, well, you've got to call on your old customers. They seldom say this, we got to call on your customers because you want to build a good relationship and you want them to like you and you want them to be open to referrals and so on. So here's the question that you have to ask. It is this: where is my next sale coming from? Where is my next sale coming from? Where am I going to get my next sale? And if the person you're talking to is not the primary likely source of your next sale, then they are a 20%er. They're at the low end of value. You've got to focus on where the 80% of value is going to come from. So always ask yourself this question: where is my next sale going to come from? And if what you're doing right now is not leading to the development of that next sale, stop doing it and do something else. Now this brings us to a great question. It is, what is the work of a salesperson? Selling, by the way, is the oldest profession. Many people have ideas about what the oldest profession might be, but selling is the oldest profession. Other things are merely subsets or subcategories of selling. And ever since selling began, thousands and thousands of years ago, the job of a salesperson has consisted of 3 activities. This is your work. Your work is to prospect, to present, and to follow up. It's to prospect, present, and follow up. It's almost like ballet: prospect, present, and follow up. And as long as you're prospecting, presenting, and following up, prospect, present, and follow up. Prospect, present, and follow up. So, where does the Pareto principle come into? It's very simple. Spend 80% of your time prospecting and presenting. Spend only 20% of your time following up. Let me give you a very simple example with regard to prospecting and presenting. It's what we call the funnel method. Now this funnel, by the way, is one of the most important single visual tools with regard to sales success. It says that you have prospecting, and that you have presenting, and that you have following up. And you could divide it like this, so that you have ratios. And out of the bottom of this funnel, if you're fortunate, will come sales. So, in the top of this funnel, like a big hopper that grinds up branches and leaves and trees and things like that, you put in prospects. You put in new calls. You get new names and so on. Now there's a ratio, and we don't know what the ratio is, but in every sale, depending upon your skill, depending upon your product or service, depending upon your market and competition and price and the economy and everything else, there are ratios for each of these 3 stages. Your job is to determine the ratios, work the ratios, and then improve the ratios. Let me give you an example. For instance, in prospecting, you may find that you have to call 20 different people before you get 5 presentations. You may have to call and make 5 presentations before you get 2 follow-ups. You may have to do 2 follow-ups before you get 1 sale. What does this mean? It means that your ratio is 20 to 1. It means you have to make 20 calls in order to get 1 sale. It means that every single call you make pays you 5% of the sale and 5% of the commission. This, by the way, is a very important principle. Let me explain to you how it works. If you make a call on someone and they say no, you should, instead of being concerned about it, you should say, thank you very much for the money. Just like they just paid you 5%. I was working with a salesman not long ago, and he was working with these ratios. He was making 1 sale per 20 calls. He was going to quit the business because he was so discouraged because he got turned down 19 times for every time he bought. And then we pointed out to him that by keeping accurate records, he could see that he was making 1 sale per 20 calls. He was making $500 per sale, which meant that he was making approximately $25 for every call. So he changed his mindset, which changed his career. He changed his mindset to this. He said, every time I talk to somebody, whether they buy or not, I get $25. So every time I talk to somebody, no matter how they treat me, I'm going to say, thank you for the $25. Thank you for the $25. Thank you for the $25. Now, he said it to himself. Thank you for the $25. And he got so eager to get up in the morning and go and talk to people because every person he spoke to was reaching in their pocket, whether they knew it or not, and peeling off the bills and giving them $25. Now, he just collected it on the sale. Well, what do you think happened to this salesperson? Well, once his attitude changed from fears of failure and rejection to being able to hardly wait, to not being able to hardly wait to call on prospects, he began to see more and more people. As he began to see more and more people with greater and greater enthusiasm, what do you think happened? I'll tell you what happened. He got better. He got more enthusiastic. He got more focused. He used his time better. He prospected better over the phone, and he began to improve his ratios. And this is what happened. He went from 20 calls to one sale, to 15 calls to one sale, to 10 calls to one sale, to 5 calls to one sale, and by the end of the year, he was at 3 calls to one sale. Now, you don't have to be a mathematical genius to work out that this equals a 7 times increase of income in 12 months. He became one of the top salespeople in his industry in the United States. He eventually became a millionaire and established his own company, training other salespeople, and is one of the most successful salespeople in American history because he found this very simple thing. If you can determine your ratios by keeping accurate records, and you can concentrate on being grateful for every single person you speak to, and you continue to prospect, present, and follow up, what you can do for your income is astonishing. Now, in terms of time management, this is one of the most important things we know. The average salesperson today in America works 1.5 hours per day. This was first discovered in a survey done by Sales and Marketing Management magazine in 1928. They were astonished at the figures. From 1928 to 1988, for 50, 60 years, they looked for ways to improve the efficacy of salespeople. And you know something? In 1988, they did another national study, and they found that, surprise, surprise, after 60 years of work with this statistic, the average salesperson was still working 1.5 hours per day. Columbia University did a follow-up study, came out to the same thing, about 20% of the time they spend working. Now, if you ask salespeople how much time they spend working, they'll say it's as much as 40%, 50%. The fact of the matter is, it's about 1.5 hours a day. What is your job? Your job is to spend more than the average if you want to earn more than the average. Let me ask you a question. Here's a key question. When are you working? As a professional salesperson, when are you actually working? When are you at work? When are you working? Here's what point I'm trying to make. Is the average salesperson, every salesperson, you and me, wake up every morning unemployed. And we are unemployed until we get face-to-face, heart-to-heart, head-to-head with a qualified prospect who can and will buy within a reasonable period of time. Let me restate that. You are only working when you're head-to-head, knee-to-knee, face-to-face with a qualified prospect who can and will buy within a reasonable period of time. If you're talking to somebody who says, well, I'm not going to be able to buy for 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, don't go back to the office and say, boy, I've got a good prospect. He just can't buy for a few years. This is not a prospect. A prospect is a person that you're face-to-face with who can and will buy. What does this mean? It means that with regard to your time, you've got to be absolutely adamant about how you use it, and you've got to concentrate on spending more time face-to-face with qualified prospects who can and will buy. Here's one of the ideas. First is plan your time and plan your work geographically. This is one of the major reasons for failure in the United States in sales is people do not plan their work geographically. What they do is they drive to the north of town and they make a little call on somebody who agreed to see them, and they drive to the south of town and they make another little call, and then they spend the next 2 hours driving all the way to the north of town to make one more call. Why do you think it is that salespeople do this? I'll tell you why. It's because they're so afraid of rejection that they plan their traveling time so that they can spend most of their day on the road and less time face-to-face with people who can say no. And by the way, if no is a problem for you, the word no, then you've picked a very interesting field in which to attempt to earn a living. So plan your time geographically. Divide your time like this. Take your territory and divide it like this, and divide it into A, B, C, and D. And then organize yourself so that you spend all of a day or a half a day in an A, and then in a B, and then in a D, or then in a C, and so on. And if somebody in a D, the D zone of your territory wants to talk to you, then schedule that. Say, I'm going to be there Thursday afternoon in your area. I've worked with salespeople, by the way, who've dramatically increased their sales by dramatically shortening the amount of transition time. They'd have all their sales in this zone so that the amount of time that they spend traveling between prospect is so low that they increase the amount of time they spend face-to-face with prospects. Here's another thing that you can do. It's very simple. I talk about it all the time. Is start earlier, stay later. Start earlier, stay later. Well, in its simplest terms, here's the rule. Don't do anything in the office that you can do before and after work. Many individuals and even sales managers have transformed their organization by simply instilling this principle, is that we don't create proposals, we don't put things together during the working day. The working day is what is called prime time. Prime time is when there are customers and prospects out there to be seen. When there are customers and prospects out there to be seen, we don't spend time in the office writing proposals or letters or doing anything else. In fact, if anybody can find you in your office on a regular basis, it means that you've got to spend more time with your clients, or your, as they say, people who are not fired with enthusiasm will soon be fired with enthusiasm. Now, next is to get better at your key tasks. Get better at what you do. In Texas, they have a saying that says, it ain't the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. Your job is, when you are in a sales situation, to be very good at what you do in that sales situation. When you're in a sales situation, you should be so competent that you don't waste it. Now, the final point here is to read, listen to tapes, and get better at your key tasks. Improve constantly. You see, the more you can improve your skills, the more you commit yourself to personal development, the more successful you're going to be in selling. Now, I want to give you what I call my minutes theory. It's a very simple theory I've developed in 30 years or more of selling door-to-door, office-to-office, telephone-to-telephone, every kind of presentation. My minutes theory will make you rich. My minutes theory is so powerful that I've never had anybody say anything but that it will work for anybody who will make it work. And the minutes theory is based on a very simple principle, which is pretty hard to refute. It's this, is that you are paid today in direct proportion for the number of minutes that you spend face-to-face with customers. If you're spending an average of 90 minutes a day with prospects and customers, which is the average, and that means half are above and half are below, if you're spending 90 minutes a day, it means all of your income is being generated by 90 minutes per day. However, if you increase the minutes from 90 to 180, if you double the number of minutes, you must, holding constant for everything else, you must double your income. You must double your income if you just keep doing the same things in the same way, but you do twice as much of it, and you spend twice as much face-to-face time. So this is what you do. First, your goal is to increase your minutes. You want more minutes. How do you do this? You start with the baseline. What's your baseline? Your baseline is the number of minutes you're spending today. If you want a real good exercise, one that may make you feel real sad for a while, take a stopwatch. You can buy them for $21. Take a stopwatch, and each time you go in to see a prospect for the next week, set the stopwatch, and at the end of the meeting, turn off the stopwatch. You know what will happen? At the end of the week, add it up, and you will be absolutely astonished at the very few number of minutes that you're actually spending with prospects. But now that's your baseline, and let's say you come up with the average and you are at 90 minutes. Well, if you're now at 90 minutes, then your goal is to increase your baseline. Your goal is to think every minute of every day, how can you increase the number of face-to-face minutes with clients? The second part of the minutes theory is to get better, is to improve, as I said before. I cannot talk about this more important, is to increase your skills so that when you actually increase the number of minutes with clients, you will also increase your likelihood of making a sale with those clients. Remember, it's no good to spend more and more time with customers if you don't get any better at what you're doing. In fact, if you get better and better at what you're doing and simultaneously you spend more and more minutes with customers, you will be absolutely astonished at what you accomplish. The final key to this is what I call activities management. Activities management says this, is you cannot control the sales. You cannot control the number where your next sale is going to come from. The only thing that you can control is the activities that you engage in, the number of people you call on, the number of people you see, the number of people you follow up on. But quantity of contacts leads to quality of prospects and customers. Your activities are controllable. If you control your activities, by extension, you control your sales. So play the probabilities. Increase the number of things that you do that are high-value activities, talking with customers that are of high value as prospects, and keep asking yourself this key question in selling. The key question in time management is what I'm doing right now leading to a sale. Is what I'm doing right now leading to a sale? And if it's not leading to a sale, stop doing it and start doing something else. The 80-20 rule applies to every single aspect of selling. The 80-20 rule says that 20% of what you do will account for 80% of your results. The 80-20 rule says that everything you're earning today, you're earning as a result of the number of minutes you're spending face-to-face with customers. And if you can increase those minutes and then increase the size of the fight in the dog, increase your skills at the same time, you'll increase your earning ability and enhance your life more than anything else you could possibly do.